This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. My name is Roger McDonald. If I haven't met you yet, my name is Roger McDonald. I am the town administrator here for Monterey, and this is Susan Cooper. If you haven't met Susan, she is a select board member, and this is her show tonight. So we'll go through this as just like we did. It's essentially a repeat of what we did back in March, and
Yeah, a whole week and a half ago.
yeah, a whole week and a half ago, exactly.
Hey, things have changed already, so you never know.
It's kind of a little loose, if you can hold, we've asked to maybe hold questions to the end, but I know people like to ask questions when they ask them, so whatever you want to do is fine. So, whatever works. Thank you.
So, probably you've heard some scuttlebutt already, but that's okay. I'm gonna start from the beginning and see how it goes. That's the butternut fire. And I'm just gonna start by saying, my daughter is responsible for the beautiful layout of the slides.
Oh, I thought you were responsible for the fire.
Definitely not that. Definitely not that, but she is responsible for the cool slides. And the errors are mine, not hers. That's me saying that because it's what I believe. I think that as a race, we have a tendency to wait for disaster before we act. We're good at planning when it's a glitzy, pretty project and we want it to look nice. People are happy to pay for a new building. They don't want to fix an old one. People are happy to pay for a new bridge. They don't want to fix an old one. Right now, we don't want to do either one if we're in Great Barrington. But in general, that's how we act. We wait till things fail. We wait till they break. We wait till there's a disaster, and then we try to pick up the pieces. That's not what we're doing. We see that is coming, and we're trying to make choices to avert that problem. And that is what this is all about. That I don't want to see things tank and fail before we act. I have people that are saying it's too much money, apparently are either don't believe that it will fail or are willing to let it fail. But I'm pretty sure once it does fail, and you'll see why that may happen, once it does fail, no one's gonna be happy with that result. And then we're gonna be scrambling to try and pick up the pieces, and that's not a good way to go forward. So that's the mindset I was in when I started working on this with Sean and Chris, who we've all put a lot of hours, and they put way more than I have into this. We're trying to make sure that we can have continued 24/7 emergency fire and medical services. That means when you dial 911, somebody comes. You don't just get a dispatcher, you actually get help. We want to at least maintain, if not improve, the response, also the quality of response, right? So for instance, going from a responder to an EMT would be a difference. We're trying to control costs, and people are gonna say, but it's so expensive. People are expensive. It is expensive, right? We are going from having had a free service for close to 100 years. We got this service for free because we had enough young people that were healthy and willing to be part of that activity as a community, and we had a lot fewer calls, to having to pay for the service that we want. It's a reality. And our other goal, Frank and I are, and I should say Sean and Chris first and foremost, but also Frank and I are committed to trying to build agreements with other towns to try to share some of the costs, but also share some of the service. We want to figure out how to do it bigger and better with other towns, not more expensive, but more comprehensive. But that, if anybody's ever tried to work in a committee, knows is difficult. We have to work with a bunch of other towns to accomplish that, and it's not going to happen overnight. Why are we here? Well, rising demand and falling volunteerism. Anybody notice something interesting about this picture? I believe that's the Egmont Inn fire. Yeah. What do you notice about that picture?
One fire.
Yeah, there's only one person in that picture. There's actually more back here. You see these little lights back here, that's another truck, and there's actually a person there, but it's not a lot of people, and it's a really big fire. That building did burn to the ground. This is the picture on the National Front. Notice that firefighters is in tens of thousands and fire department calls is in tens of millions. Those are not the same scale. This is from the National Volunteer Fire Council. This is what it looks like on one graph. So firefighters down 16% while calls increased 206% in the same period. In addition to more calls, there's increasing regulation, there's increasing training and medical requirements for both the National Fire Protection Association and OSHA, which is Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and that's both the state and the federal one. There's increasing demands for training and for physical exams. The new OSHA standards would make firefighters, and this would include, by the way, volunteer firefighters, take, 2 MRIs a year, one every 6 months, because they're based on the fire load for urban settings and assuming that there's a lot more fire than we would normally see happily, but that's what the requirement's gonna be. This is Monterey. So that is out of the annual report from 1978. We had 21 active firefighters and we had 15 calls. Last year, we had 187 calls. I think it's actually 185. I think I made a mistake. However, notice we still have 20 firefighters theoretically, but not all of them are from the town. There's 12 in-town firefighters and 8 firefighters who are able to be part of our fire department because we have the shift program at night. So that's what the fire department roster for 2024 looks like. Total count of 27. Now, that's the people that are inactive due to illness or injury. That's the people that are inactive because they're no longer in the region. That's the people who will be at a retirement within 5 years. And I think most of the additional ones at retirement are retiring within 3 years. And while we have that one up there, have a little look at the number of calls answered by the remaining firefighters. Yeah, out of 187. This is firefighters who do not work in or near town. So that's people available during the day. 6 plus the 2 people who are actually sitting in the back right now who work for our operations department, Seamus and Tyler. This is people who don't live in town who are able to participate in our fire department because of the shift program, or because they work on, or also because they work on the DPW. And this is projected day-night availability within 5 years because of the retirements. Now, I want you to ponder something. Look at the number of calls on the ones left up there, or even if we go back one, and ask yourself, how many of you would give 130 calls is about 6, and if you figure only 2 hours per call, and I know that a lot of calls are longer than that, that's 6.5 work weeks worth of calls, just for those 130 calls. And that doesn't include all the rest of the stuff they don't even get paid for, like resetting all the equipment, taking care of the trucks, doing all the paperwork. Recently, the Richmond fire chief said when they were offering him $7,000 to be the volunteer fire chief, that it was going to be over 1,000 hours of paperwork with the new regulations for him, right? That's half of a work year in just paperwork people are asking him to do for the princely sum of $7,000 a year. Most people just can't do it anymore. So that's within 5 years, we'd be down to that. And honestly, I don't even think it's gonna take that long. This is not a solo sport, right? You can't safely take that fire truck out with only one person, even if sometimes it happens. But to actually effectively work a scene, and you'll note, yeah, there's a fire, but that's a car roller alert. We had one recently, as I recall, right, in Marlboro. Yeah, it's a lot of people working these things. How many firefighters to fight a fire? 2 to safely roll a truck. Really, it's supposed to be 4, according to the National Fire Protection Association, but they recognize that rural areas usually can't field that many. 3 firefighters just to begin to assess a fire, and 6 fire trucks to actually begin fighting a fire effectively. I said 12 up there, but that's really a minimum. If you consider that the standard's actually supposed to be 4 per truck, that would be 24 firefighters on scene. Keep in mind, when people talk about mutual aid, remember, nobody has 6 fire trucks. There's no town in Berkshire County that has 6, not even a city, 6 fire trucks. Maybe.
Pittsfield does.
Pittsfield has 6? Okay. So typically, when we're actually fighting a structure fire, we're using mutual aid because nobody has that many fire trucks or firefighters. That's a picture that those 2 firefighters that answered 130 calls last year. That's a lot of their time. And just imagine what the situation would be if those 2 people were not working in town. Because if we don't, and I'm not trying to hold anybody hostage, I'm stating a fact, right? How many of you or your kids or your grandkids would be willing to devote that much time and energy to a volunteer pastime and give up their working job to do it, right? If they're working out of town, they physically cannot do that. And if we're not gonna pay them to be in town to do this job, they're going to take jobs to support their families, and those jobs are not gonna be in town. So someone else is gonna have to be driving that truck. There's really only one other person, and we're gonna have to he's gonna have to be willing to close the library or leave his normal job to drive that fire truck, because there won't be anyone else around who can do it. I'm not trying to scare you, I'm just laying it out there so people can understand the facts as I see them and the firefighters see them, so that it's not a surprise to anyone if this doesn't pass and we don't have fire service. This is additional administrative pressures on fire departments. I already talked about that, but this is a list of the ones that came to mind as I was going through it. I don't think I need to read it to you. If we don't do something, we're gonna lose this service. We're gonna lose firefighter coverage and emergency response, because typically speaking, even though we're paying for ambulance service with Southern Berkshire Ambulance, it takes them longer to get here than it takes our people to get to the site in Monterey by a significant amount, right? So with a lot of things, the faster you get a response, the bigger a difference it makes. If you have a stroke, if you have a heart attack, if you have an asthma attack, what did I not list? Any of those things. If you fall down a flight of stairs and break something, 20 minutes is a long time to wait for help. If, assuming you can call to the phone or you have it in your pocket and you can call for help. It might only be somewhere like 5 minutes if we have people in the house. It might even be less. I've had a lot of meetings in this room with the fire chief and the deputy fire chief when the calls come in, and they've been in that truck rolling out the door in under 2 minutes. I think it was like 80 seconds one time. Yes, I did time it because I'm weird. The neighboring towns are in a similar situation. So we're not really in a position to say, well, we don't have to. We can let it not go because someone else will do this. No, that's not gonna happen. I'll talk about what some other towns are doing, but everyone's in the same situation. There are not that many young people, and the young people we have don't wanna devote this much time and energy to a volunteer pursuit. A lot of them feel like they can't. They need to spend every hour that they have trying to make a living to afford to live here, assuming they can afford a house here. We all know how hard that is. I know that the 2 25-year-olds living in my house are like, if you won't pay us, we're not doing it. Like, there's a lot of reasons for it. If you go to the National Volunteer Fire Council's website, I have a thing at the end of this and it'll be posted on the website. there's pages and pages that talk about what all the forces are societally and economically that are contributing to this, but it's a reality, whether we like it or not. Nobody likes it. But the reality is we don't have the people to do it. This is a big one. If we actually lose our fire protection, your homeowner's insurance is going to go up a lot. In all likelihood, and I will have the answer to this question by next week, because I'm gonna call my own insurer to find out what it would cost me to do this. It would probably cost you more in an increased insurance premium than it's gonna cost us to have a full-time fire department. You don't believe me? Call them up and ask what your premium will go to if we're a class 10 for a fire department. And I think that speaks for itself. So what's going on in other towns? Well, at least 3 other towns are going to pay fire departments in South County. One is Egremont, assuming that, by the way, that's what the select boards want to do. That assumes that it passes their town meetings. This is right off their thing they had on their website. An all-volunteer model for fire medical response is antiquated and currently unsustainable. Their eldest firefighter is 84. I think they had 3 remaining firefighters, all well over 65, that were available during the day. And they said, gee, I don't really think we can do this anymore. So their plan calls for 3 full-time firefighters in 2026, FY 2026, a chief and 2 firefighter EMTs. They do not have sleeping quarters, which is true of most of the stations in South County, with the exception of this one. Because we had a very forward-thinking chief who built this building. They are, however, planning for a new building with sleeping quarters, but there's a lot of debate about exactly what that's gonna look like. Stockbridge and West Stockbridge are going in whole hog. It's, they're planning to develop, they already have a shared services agreement, assuming it gets approved at both their town meetings. They're heading towards 24/7 fire and EMS, however, and rising to paramedic level. I'm kind of reading this only because there might be some people in the room who can't easily read it. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. In FY 2026, they're gonna increase with 2 new firefighters. Stockbridge already had a paid chief and deputy chief. It will only be 10/7 coverage. They don't have sleeping quarters either. And West Stockbridge is gonna pay for 40% of the cost of the command staff. So our concept is that it's going to be a shared department with both towns.
When
They
you say
did
10/7, you mean like 10 hours?
10 hours a
7 days
day,
week?
7 days a week. Yes, absolutely, thank you. How are they getting from here to there? Well, they're getting their ambulance service. Right now, West Stockbridge gets theirs from Richmond, and Stockbridge gets theirs from both Lenox and Lee, depending on the part of town that the call comes from. They're gonna continue that till 2028, by which time they're hoping that they will have 9 full-time firefighters, including a chief, 2 deputy chiefs, 6 firefighter EMTs. They're actually putting an ambulance on their warrant this year, because it's one of those weird situations where you have to have one to get one. To get this certification, you have to have the EMTs and show that you're EMT capable under the umbrella of another EMT provider before they'll actually give you full EMT certification. It's an interesting system. And they're planning on a new firehouse. This is from one of the studies they did for this, the green things show response times. This is the existing Stockbridge station. That's the existing West Stockbridge station. And this is where they think they're gonna site a new station that would have sleeping quarters to ultimately house the new fire program. They're still gonna be relying on volunteers as well, because even with 9 full-time paid firefighters, guess what? It's not enough. So what do we do? Any questions yet? Wow, this group really holds their questions. Sorry. Ultimately, so just to give you a little perspective on the emergency medical personnel, I had some people go, well, we don't need more ambulances. I'm like, well, actually, yes, we do. Just this was it Saturday or Sunday? Saturday. Saturday, we were down to one remaining ambulance south of the Mass Pike. All of the extant ambulances were out on calls. One was a section 12, which is a psych evaluation that takes a very long time. One of them had to go to Bay State, yada, yada, yada. One ambulance remaining.
I work at Berkshire Medical Center. We don't have enough ambulances in the county.
You don't even come down to.
You know what I mean? We don't, they're
Yeah.
just, it's not just here, it's all.
I know, but I'm just like trying to keep it moving, but you're absolutely right, we don't. So this is not a situation where we can be like, someone else will do it. There's no one else to do it. This is what I'm trying to tell you. So what we are trying to work on, because I think ultimately we need to be thinking about how we can share services. We can't do it by saying we can have fewer services. What we have to do is we have to think about what we can share. We could, for example, have some type of shared services agreement or fire district where we had a shared administrative costs. So one chief serving the whole area with some deputy chiefs and captains, instead of everybody paying for an administrative chief. You could have, right, you could have your administrative under one umbrella, but serving multiple towns. But the reality is, Tyringham's already getting their services from Lee because they're so close. New Marlboro and Otis and Sandusfield are all more or less in the same boat we are. The main difference between us and some of the other towns is their willingness to recognize the severity of the situation. That thing I showed you back with all the, how many people are actually active, right? And this is true of some other towns too. I won't name names like Sheffield. If they look at their roster and they hold up that roster that I started out at the beginning with all those people on it, and they say, look how many people we have as volunteer firefighters. We're fine. What they don't do is how many of the people are aging out? How many of the people haven't answered a call in the last 4 years? How many of the people have answered fewer than 5 calls? How many of those people, go down or have moved out of town, but their name is still on there? They're not going through that exercise. And that way they can choose to pretend like they're in a good situation that might be pretty unrealistic. Because they're all afraid of what it's gonna cost. Because not paying for the service is less expensive. But sometimes if you don't pay for it, you don't get it. What we're looking for now is to go to 24/7 coverage. And this year, it would only be with 3 full-time firefighters. Our goal would be to have one person in the house that's capable of command at a scene, capable of driving the truck, capable of operating the pump, and having that person in-house, even though we'd still be relying on volunteers for that first year. Because one firefighter isn't enough to safely roll that truck, even if they're not going to a house fire. We would also bring on, we know that weekend days are particularly hard to get volunteers for. People are busy and they have lives, or they're going to church, or they're doing their laundry, I don't know, but we do know already that getting people to respond on weekends, particularly weekend mornings, is very hard. So we would bring on additional per diem firefighters for the weekend days. So we definitely have 2 people in-house to roll the truck. The difference in time can be significant, right? So if they're in the house, they can get out of here in under 2 minutes. If they have to wait for someone to come from somewhere, maybe it takes them a couple minutes to get to the car, and maybe it takes them 5 or 6 minutes to get here, assuming they could drop what they were doing and run out the door, and then they still have to gear up. You're talking about possibly 10 or 15 minutes before the truck rolls, assuming the firefighter can get there. But we would still need volunteers, obviously. We're not sure what 2027 would look like. It might look like 6 full-time firefighters. It might involve shared services with other towns, but we can't know that until we establish those services with other towns. I can tell you that we're working on it, that we're talking to the other towns, that it involves a lot of meetings, that involves a lot of people and a lot of people coming to agreements. We've already started to work more actively with Otis. Otis, did I somehow not get Otis in there? I didn't. Otis is, the ambulance in Otis is working, the private ambulance is working with the town, or the town is working with the ambulance, depending on which way you want to look at it, to come under the town and be absorbed by the fire department. They're also hoping to bring on additional EMTs for that ambulance service, paid for by the town. That's gonna be on their warrant. It's a complicated process because of the fire company and their resources becoming part of the town, but they're hopeful that that's gonna happen. We've already started to work with the company. Hopefully that working with option will remain as it comes into the town. I think the town will want that to happen, but we have to then work out an agreement. We hope to also work with New Marlboro, but it's unclear where they are politically at this moment. And so this is what we think of as the pros and cons of going this way. The third full-time firefighter that we'd like to hire will be someone with emergency medical experience, because we think that we should be bringing on EMTs. Even if we don't have an ambulance, and we may end up needing to do that at some point, but even if we don't, it makes a big difference for a bunch of things, like that list I had mentioned earlier. It means they can provide care on site faster for those situations where that will make a big difference. We have an average age in our town of 65.4. I think that those 5 or 10 minutes, well, probably it's more like, what's the average response time? Somewhere like
Like 16 minutes.
15 to 16 minutes. So it's probably at least 10 minutes faster, one of our people going to that site, which could make a big difference if you just had a heart attack or fell down the stairs. When my horse fell on me and crushed my ankle a couple years ago, the Chatham Rescue had to get me off a mountain. And I did wait probably about 20 minutes with my broken leg, but I was very grateful for that service. Do you want me to read this list, or do you want to just read yourselves? Okay, thank you. For me, I would really like to have seen us have 2 people in the house 24/7. I would like to think that that truck could roll as soon as that call comes in. But it's economically, that's a big jump to make all at once. The other advantage of doing this is it gives us more time to think about all of the stuff we need to put in place to bring on those people, to make sure we can train them, to make sure we can keep them actively engaged, and to make them into a team, because it's actually not that easy a thing to do. This is the financials for, I think I did update that, didn't I? Yeah, I did. This is the financials for, so these numbers are a little bit different than the numbers from 10 days ago, because the insurance costs came down. Yay! We did some clever stuff with bringing down the cost of health insurance for staff, so these numbers came down a little bit. It would be, with insurance, bringing on 3 full-time firefighters would run us about I'm gonna round up to $429,000 this year. It's a lot of money. People cost money. There's just no question about it.
What we're already spending?
So this year we spent about $500,000. So it would be a little less than 100% increase. It's actually a little bit lower than that number. It's about 60 cents per thousand assessed value. Just to put this is average single-family home. I believe the median home price is a little less than that, right, Steve? But about 466 or something,
488.
488.
Half
So-
above, half below.
Right. Just to put that in perspective, that's probably less than the cost of breakfast or lunch for two at the roadside. It's a lot less than the cost of my phone bill or my internet bill to have 24/7 coverage for the fire department. So there's also gonna be an override on the ballot after town meeting, because the cost of the whole budget is more than our levy. It's actually only about, what, did we get it down?
$160,000.
$1,000 more than the levy limit. We went for a number higher than we actually need for this year, because we were shooting for covering the maximum that will cost us to bring on what would I call it, 9 firefighters, so 3 full-time firefighters in the house at all times. But we're creating an entire new department, and this is a real number, right? That what's going on in the other towns is demonstrating that it costs a lot to have 24/7 coverage. I was looking at some data today to see like, well, you know, we keep trying to find ways to save money. What hours would we have to cover to get like most of the calls if they came in? Most of the calls come in between 7 AM and midnight. That doesn't mean no calls come in between midnight and 7 AM, but it's not like you can say, well, just cover the day shift, right? That would lose a lot of calls. Yeah, the override was meant to cover the entire potential cost of the multi-year plan. It turns out that despite the best efforts of the select board and the finance committee, we got that a little wrong. In fact, we will have to probably ask for an override again, because the override will only be good for this coming 2026 year. So ignore the amount that's on that ballot thing, because really all we're asking for is the additional money, $160-ish thousand over the levy limit, to make it possible to have full-time firefighters in the house. And we hope that this cost is gonna come down, the overall cost, if we can share services with other towns. Administrative costs are often a big piece of it. It all depends on what the other towns decide that they wanna do, and whether they feel like they can live without these services or not. I also wanna point out that I'm pretty sure that personally, my house's coverage, the insurance costs would go up more if we don't have a fire department, an active fire department. If we go down from 9A to 10, I think I'll probably pay more in increased insurance costs on my house than I will pay for the 9 people sitting in this house. That's just something to think about. Maybe check out your own insurance. There's a little sheet that we made up. If you want to take that home with you, you can get it on the website. It was also, a version of it was in the Monterey News this month. And that's just thank yous. So we've spent a lot of hours working on this. The fire chief, the deputy fire chief, Frank, Roger, all have been invaluable in this process. And the finance committee as well, Steve Pullen and Eileen, both have been really helpful in this process. I'm amazed that no one's asked questions, because I think I got like 1,000 questions by this point last Saturday.
Why now? It seems like all the towns are dealing with this issue at the same time. Was there something that triggered all of this?
I think everything started rolling down the hill after COVID. People, the severity of the emergency services situation began to become clearer and clearer to people. because of the strains put on the system by the COVID-19. We also, in the same period, I'm sure you read about the ambulance companies that went under. Berkshire County and Franklin County are in kind of a weird situation. We're the only remaining counties in Massachusetts where ambulance service is not under fire service. In most of the United States, ambulance is not considered an essential service. And the reason for that is pretty much every metro area, including all the ones where all the people who make the rules live, have it under the fire department. So it's an essential service. So part of the problem is that part hasn't been recognized. So the ambulance service has been under strain a lot, and everybody started to recognize it. As far as fire, I think it's been part of the same process. I think that the changes in the economy are part of it. I think that declining volunteerism, if you look up volunteerism in the United States, it's been going down year by year for a long time. There's a lot of people claiming that it's gone up now, but if you look a little deeper, what you see is what's gone up is people volunteering. I forget how they phrase it. Basically, they're more likely to check on their neighbors and bring friends food, but they're not joining organized groups to volunteer. And that would include things like firefighting or ambulance squads. So nationally, people just aren't volunteering as much. And at some point, people woke up and started to look at their rosters and realized that people were aging out and that there weren't young people to pick up the reins.
And in our case, we had one member of our department that fell ill, and that changed everything for us. That one member was covering 80% of something,
I don't know about 80%,
a
but
large number.
yeah.
And then there was no backfill. And people say, well, how long till the rest fall off? One accident, one, parent that they have to be removed and go visit somewhere else or be out of the area. It's a cascading effect, so, yeah. And the other thing too is Southern Berkshire Ambulance, we've been paying for them, but that's also, they're having as much trouble as us in staffing, as you've heard. So the staffing is a really critical piece of this. And one question that was asked, I'm Eileen Marcus, for those of you who don't know me, Chair of the Finance Committee. And the other thing that was asked at the other briefing that was really important was why now, why us? And it's like, we talked about partnerships being a very critical component. Mutual aid is only for volunteers. So for volunteer fire departments, right? And it's not really, it's for everything?
For everything.
We keep on changing
It was designed for that,
for that.
but
Right.
that doesn't mean it only applies
But
to
it doesn't
that.
mean it don't apply, but it's not really even clear. But the point is, no one wants to even discuss unless it's on your ballot and you show that you're really making an effort. Because why should they spend the money and go in with us? So it's kind of like we're all playing a game of chicken to see, and that's why Susan talked about it, who's on the ballot.
How many of the calls that are to fire and rescue in car accidents?
I didn't hear this.
What percentage are fire and what percentage are,
Medical
EMS, or
card.
medical? 50-50.
Emergency medical stuff to fire is about 50-50. We actually do a slight bit more fire stuff, but generally speaking, we call it 50-50.
Varies a little from year to year, but it's about there. That may change, part of the reason fire has gone up so much is because of fire alarms, right? But you have to answer them, because just recently, there was an actual fire at Coy that was picked up by a smoke alarm, right? Sometimes the fire alarms are actually fires.
So every fire alarm that we get is considered a fire until it's determined that it's not a fire, so.
Barbara.
Have you, I noticed, and thank you because I was looking for it, that you did acknowledge these are full-time people and they're going to have health benefits.
Correct.
I did not see these are full-time people and they're going to have health benefits and pension benefits under That's terrible.
So there will be pension benefits. This is a weird part of the system. You
Yeah.
only get assessed for the pension system every, 3 years?
2 years.
2 years. And
Well-
believe it or not, they would not give us separate figures. And because we don't have firefighters, and firefighters in a different class than police, we're in a different class than regular workers, you can't just use a number. Like, I don't think it makes sense to just use a number that I know is wrong. They won't give us numbers. So,
Historically, Monterey has been very chintzy about health benefits.
mhm.
They were very nice to me, why, I don't know. But I did get the health benefits. And it makes all the difference
Yes.
when you've got tariffs staring you.
Mhm. So we will be, we're by law have to give health benefits to full-time workers. They will, of course, have pension too, and as soon as I actually
And if
can
you could
get figures for that, I will include it, but I can't do it if they won't tell me what we know. It's
And
a
also,
problem. They should, but
Who's they?
The insurance broker.
no, in this case, Berkshire.
Berkshire Retirement Account.
Oh,
Yeah.
retirement, I think you're talking about.
Berkshire
But Barbara,
Retirement.
also, you should know that this,
Retirement what?
Retirement system.
System.
It's Berkshire County Retirement System.
I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about, but Barbara, also you should know that this actually could help the rest of the staff, because right now,
Yeah.
we have how many full-time staff in the town?
Nine.
9, so this will bring it up, so then there might be an eye care benefit, there are other tools, and, so we're really working on trying to raise that level of
Yeah.
benefits.
Right,
Better.
yeah, and it's so important,
Mhm.
as a retirement benefit.
Thank you. I first want to say that this group of people that are volunteers deserve all our thanks and appreciation. They are just a wonderful group of people, number one. I've used them, unfortunately, a number of times. When I couldn't walk, I fell down, it was unbelievable. The question I have to you is, if you have a paid firefighter standing next to a volunteer, is there a danger of losing volunteers because it's only human nature to say, hey, this person's getting paid, I'm just giving up my time? Do you think there's a possibility that you will lose the volunteer group of people?
Good question. Don't exactly have the answer for that. But
So there's a human nature out there.
we're losing the volunteers anyways.
Yeah.
Yes, we're gonna have a few. Having full-time staff should help aid the volunteers in only having to show up for what's necessary. So if we can staff your call at 3:00 in the morning to help assist you and not have to get that volunteer get out of bed, and they can go to work in the morning and have a good day's worth of work.
That's my only concern, because it's a human nature. If I'm doing something and I'm getting paid and somebody's doing something, not
Does
getting paid.
Does it have potential for issues? Yes, our goal is to not create, we need the volunteers. Even if we hire 3 full-timers per shift right now, we still need 10 or 20 volunteers on the roster to come assist, because there's no way the town can afford 10 or 20.
I think
Volunteer's a bit of a misnomer. People get compensated for responding to calls, not a lot, but a little bit. So I think people are, getting something in return.
They are getting something out of it.
I also feel like everybody who's a volunteer right now is not like volunteering because they're just getting paid, like you're right, like there's some payment, but like, I don't think that, I can't think of anyone who's gonna stop coming. Because, some people are getting paid more money to be required to show up as opposed to like show up if we can.
I mean, I gotta say that I'm technically paid as a select board person, and I refuse to, I had so many people tell me, well, I was getting paid for my job, that for a number of months I refused to take the checks because I was really offended. Because I'm sorry, but I don't think getting paid like 5 cents an hour counts as being paid. Right? That's just insulting.
And just, the finance committee's not paid, and we gotta sit next to the select board and go through all this. But I wanna say that a lot of this. I charge by the word. That's why but a lot of this is also predicated on these partnerships developing. So we're also hopeful that, like the school board, we've had a conversation with the superintendent, the school board, so that there are volunteers in high school, parents, young families, because people volunteer also as career ladders, not for a career. So we're hoping to build those relationships that build out the volunteers too.
Lynn?
What percentage of the fire alarms are not actually fires when we get there? Sounds like that's a common thing. Interesting.
Don't have,
But just,
the majority are not fires, but you'd be surprised at how many we find waters running through the ceilings. There is smoke in the house, or you took a shower and the steam came out from the shower and set the alarms off, so.
yeah.
What about CO? Like, that's deadly.
CO calls, yeah, probably 50-50, we find CO in houses, so. To blame the alarms is not, they're doing their job most of the time, but.
My question is kind of medically related. What is the willingness of you guys to bring on volunteers that maybe can't do the fire portion, but are able to do the medical portion? And then here's the other aspect, like for me, I have a set skill set that gets me a lot of the way with medical skills, but I'm not an EMT. So for me to become an EMT, I have to take a course, and that costs money. Like I'm just gonna be blunt because I know, but if you're having a heart attack in this town, there's a good chance that you're not gonna do well because time is of the essence. Like a stroke is one thing, you got a little longer of a bit of time to get to a hospital, but it's still serious. But if you're having a massive MI, you're probably gonna die, even if you're in Great Barrington. So the more we have people that can respond, I do CPR on people. You do too. You know that 2 minutes doing CPR doesn't sound like a lot, but you need people to take over every 2 minutes to continually sustain the blood flow. And so that's my question. It's like, because we've had this discussion before.
We've had this discussion before, and all these good ideas are a lot of work.
Right.
So I'll call myself a volunteer or what? Right now I'm getting paid better for it, yes. Prior coming here and working during the day, staff, there's not enough time in the day to come up, to fulfill all the ideas and work it down, what works, what doesn't. So we have people here.
Right.
Now we can start putting some of these programs maybe into place, see if they're a viable option. Get some training in, stronger training, have the EMS chief here, and then bring on some more volunteers that are willing to do the EMS stuff, because there's other people too in town that are willing to actually maybe more EMS stuff than fire, so.
And we hope to look for funding to get some of those classes and certifications paid and stuff like that. So it's gonna be a volunteer effort administratively. We hope to do more like the Friends of the Library and really kind of then support the department in things that maybe the town doesn't have money or is costly to individuals who want that.
What's the EMT cost? $1,000?
More than that now.
More than that now?
Yeah, more than that now.
So
it's, so it was the select board and the finance committee, I need more money.
I think it's run like 3K, but it depends, like BCC has been running classes where if you complete the course, it's free.
Right.
But you still gotta get there and do it.
This is a little off topic, but given what that gentleman said about the importance of rapid
Response.
survival of help, is the town considering, or have they considered training for individuals just for that purpose to see? This is not an argument against what you're asking us to do, which I'm in favor of. It's something additional that just occurred to me. that might be done and be worthwhile doing?
We are actually thinking about how, we're working on a lot of possibilities for how we can increase the EMS portion of training. There's actually a shortage of EMTs, and the state's actually aware of it. They've started more, like BCC, Berkshire Community College is running some EMT classes. We're hoping, as Eileen alluded to get EMT classes running at the Southern Berkshire school system again, to try to get high school kids not only trained but interested in pursuing this, but first as a volunteer, but possibly to start considering this as a career. There is a possibility of firefighter EMTs that have both skill sets. Often they prefer one to the other, but having both sets means that you have both types of training. It's a lot more training. Where we'll get the money to train them all and how we'll get them to training, that's still up in the air. And it may be that, since we're all aware that, I know Stockbridge is talking about trying to become a training center, because it's far to go. Like for fire training, you have to go all the way to Springfield. And I know our guys run training here, and we're kind of unique. There's not a lot of other departments that have put up a facility where they can actually do fire trainings on site. Not a lot of the other departments have that. There's a lot of things that need work. One of the good things about having full-time people is that they'll have a lot more time to plan and administer things like that. Write the grants.
So, just each week, daily, weekly, we get ideas of, there's stuff coming through the doors and through by email of suggestions how to solve this problem, and it's all good ideas. We just need the time to be able to, on a volunteer model, 99% will never come to fruition. If we can put people here, we can start adding to the service and being a positive asset to the area and or the town, the area, and further out, so.
Ironically, I feel like we're lucky. Because most of the other towns that are facing this problem, as you saw, they don't have sleeping quarters. They can't offer 24/7 service because they don't have anywhere for people to sleep. That's why you're seeing so many of the towns doing 10/7s, or even 10/5s. I believe I think Egremont only gonna be 5 days a week. The other thing that a lot of the towns have done is hire their chiefs to be, or actually, I think Egremont, all of them, and possibly Stockbridge, all of them, are only 40-hour workers. So they're saving costs by not giving them any overtime. It's an interesting system. A lot of towns go for a chief that's full-time, but only 40 hours. And that's what they get, is only 40 hours. Just so you know, the federal law allows firefighters to work up to 52 hours a week at regular pay rate. So, and they take a lot of things into consideration with that. I think that would be very punishing in an urban environment, but here I think it's actually workable because you're on site and you can do training and other things and make sure all that paperwork is done and plan how you're gonna do the next training, but yet be ready to deploy.
How was the negotiations with the other towns? Who's in charge of it?
So I think it's in part the chief and deputy chief, and in part me, and in part Frank. How is it going? Slow. It's a slow process of building confidence in each other and trust. And because the other towns, each town is in a different place about what they're willing to address, right? So Otis is really focused right now on their ambulance company. And they know that the fire department has an issue too, but they feel like all of their attention has to be focused just on ambulance and they have to get that running before they can turn to fire. New Marlboro is a little more complicated. But I know that both their ambulance and their fire department are struggling. And, I can't tell you where to go because politics is a really complicated animal. And it depends on all kinds of things, like who'll be sitting in the select board seats after May. Right? Like, I can't speak to it because I don't know who'll be there. All I can say is that I know that we're gonna be having another meeting. We just met with a bunch of the ambulance folks, including SBA, New Marlboro, Sandusfield, and Otis. We're all at the table. We've got another meeting planned for that. I know that Sean regularly talks to and is working with the other fire chiefs in the area. Do you wanna speak to that some more?
Missed part of it, but yeah, we've had a couple meetings in the last 2-3 weeks, and I'd say it was pretty positive. We may have rounded the corner with, but in politic land, it takes a long time to get anything done, because everybody has to be happy when it's over with, so.
Is there any,
We started about 3 years working on a couple projects, and we're still working on those projects, so.
is there any state entity that helps expedite this type of?
Is there any what?
No.
State and
Just keep if they can slow us down, they will.
But
They make it really hard on us.
I will say,
Fire training?
Oh, they're the worst.
Yeah.
They can't put it on.
It's brutal. It's absolutely brutal.
I will say that Lee Davis, the new representative from the area, she has like, I think 5 bills in at this point. One of them is just recognizing emergency medical services as an essential service, which I think would be a really good idea. The state knows that there's too few EMTs. What they're willing to throw behind it is a little less clear. And 1 week they're telling Egremont they can expedite them becoming an EMT server, and the next week they're saying, oh no, just kidding. Oh, we didn't really say that. So it's so hard to say. Like all of this it's like you're building a house of cards and you're just hoping no one opens the window and the wind blows them down.
And we did reach out to Berkshire Regional Planning Commission, which, you know, all the towns pay fees to and kind of act for the regional, they're not a government, but they do have resources and they get to come through with anything even. And we're also looking at how our seasonal designation might affect anything or might allow any funds for this, given the swell of people during those seasonal times and our needs for the fire department. But so far, that bill has absolutely no money or two.
Nobody else? You guys are a calm crowd. Yeah, go for it.
So on Thursday, April 24th, the Finance Committee will be having its briefing in the library at 6:30. So you can see how this piece of the pie fits into the entire Monterey budget pie and just overall, all the questions and decisions and priorities laid out. You should have the warrant by then, so we'll go through, you know, what the departments are getting and why, and just big picture. So I'll leave these over here, it'll be on the town website, it's hung up at the library, it'll be done, but we hope to see you on the 24th at 6:30 for a larger briefing.
And nobody asked this question, which surprises me, but for those of you who are wondering, well, what else did you consider? I don't even want to show you the spreadsheet that includes all the different possibilities because you would start to hyperventilate. I know I do, and I built the thing, but all kinds of stuff. Daytime plans that were 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day. Multiple scenarios with different numbers of firefighters working different schedules. It was not just one and done by any means. And in the end, we're pushing for the one we think gives us the best option to step forward into this process most strongly. For like the difference between the plans turned out to be, much to my shock, not a huge amount of money. So getting a lot less service for about the same money never seems like a good idea to me. I kind of think value is important. So it was hard to get behind a plan that was going to be $100,000 less and like half as much service. That doesn't seem like a good idea. Anyway,
So, last thing,
I'm
and
sorry, so this might be dumb, but we're gonna have to vote on this 2 times for it to work out, right? When, May and November?
no, May and May. May 3rd, they'll have it on the warrant.
Okay, so that means we need just a regular majority of people to say yes?
Both times, and May 6th, the override will be on the ballot.
And those are the 2 times we have to vote.
That's the 2 times you have to do it, right?
Okay, what if it doesn't go? Do we have another chance, or not till next year?
Technically speaking, we'd have 90 days to have another election
Okay,
for the override.
well, let's not do that.
No, that would suck. It'll cost more money too. We'll have to have another election to do it. So, thank you, that was a good question. But yeah. And just keep in mind that the tax levy will only increase as much as the actual budget. So the amount of the override does not change your tax levy. We could have put 10 million in there. If we only spend 400,000, that's what we pay for. So the amount of the override doesn't affect your levy at all.
When does this go into effect, like, we're paying more money next year?
It would be for FY 2026, so July.
So with this plan, would we actually be purchasing an ambulance?
No. No. Right now, I mean, ultimately, we're probably gonna need another ambulance among the towns. Right now, actually, Marlboro, Otis, and Centerfield all have ambulances, and yet, like I said, Saturday, we were down to 1 in South County, including Barrington. But, we may end up needing it. It's not clear who will need to have it, or where it should be, or any of those things. We've even spoken, in fact, at that meeting, one of the things Southern Berkshire pitched was having, a paramedic here with a fly car. That wouldn't be an ambulance, that would just be a paramedic on site faster if it was a needed call. Something where a paramedic would make a difference. It's something we've discussed. I don't know, I think ultimately, we're gonna have to see at least one more ambulance in South County. I don't know who's gonna end up having it. We don't have a highway, like Lee can pull it off, because they get to patrol an area of the highway, and that's a lot of billable accidents. It's a terrible thing to say, but it's the truth.
so I just wanna thank Susan.
Yeah, woo!
Select Board, Finance Committee, Administration, and everybody that's showing up to meetings. Appreciate the support, and we're here for you, so we support you, and, guess that's about it, right?
Yeah, I think so. Just remember, it's the cost of 1 breakfast for 2 at the roadside a month. Just gives a little perspective.
If you're dying, you're not gonna mind
What
us
is
that
that,
money.
what is the cost of 1 breakfast for 2?
Is the cost to the median, actually, no, to the average house,
$30.
the change in levy would be about little under $40 a month. So I don't know what to eat at there, but for my family, that's 2 people for lunch or breakfast at the roadside.
So I just wanted to thank everybody for showing up, and again, thank you, Susan, she's done a great job, and her daughter for putting this all together. And, this will be on the, town's website, we'll post it there as well as the, this, presentation. So, thank you very much.
Brooks, about,
No,